I'm going to fast forward a little bit because I know as a musician, you ended up booking for your bands, and a major thoroughfare, I guess is a good word for it, for you to go from your professional musicianship to being a professional behind the scenes music guy was the booking for the original band. So how did that all come about? You're getting into the booking side of things with your band.
Well, with my own groups, once I started, you know, well, I mean, most of the stuff I did in my early career was all house band stuff,
Mm-hmm.
where you're sitting down in a club and you're playing so many nights a week, so many sets a night, and you're playing cover music and you're throwing some original music in, but you're largely in the same place all the time.
Essentially, a residency is what they would call it
Residency,
nowadays.
what they
Yeah.
would call it now. It was a house band situation, is what they called it then, but it'd be like a residency. And once I started traveling, I found that most of the agents that I worked for wouldn't necessarily be very straightforward and upfront with me
What a shocker.
about, huh?
I said, what a shocker.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they would kinda tell me what I wanted to know, what I
Mm.
wanted to hear,
Yep.
as far as like, "Oh, it's a great venue, and it's oh, yeah, they've got a band house, they've got PA, they've got this, they've got that," and then you get there and it's nothing,
Hmm.
nothing like what you were told, and so I learned really early on to advance a date, like, don't just take the agent's word for it, call the club owner, get him on the phone or her, or the manager, and try to sort out as much as you can before you get to the gig. So I learned that. But then after working with agents that weren't really that good, I went, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it myself.
Hmm.
And so at that time, I had gotten to the point where I was not just the drummer, but I was the band manager, as it were. And we had, started playing in a bigger area. We played, at that time, I was playing in a rock band called Dice. We were based in Joplin, and Joplin is a really cool music city. Don't get
Hmm.
me wrong. I went to college in Joplin, and there was a lot of really cool talent there. We had a local venue there, just across the line in Kansas, in Galena, Kansas. There was a big rock club called the Ranch, and everybody that was anybody in the rock world played that room. And I mean, everybody from Kansas to, Styx, Morningstar, uh, d- um, Stevie Gaines, whose band Crawdad, he left that band and went straight to Leonard Skinner because his sister was in the band. So Joplin was a real hotbed of musicianship, and I was playing in a rock band again called Dice. We were playing the ranch and playing all the big venues, and we were an all original band. We did some cover music, but not a lot. We did like Rush, Styx, Kansas, that kind of thing, and we moved to St. Louis, and I had a really bad experience when that band ended. And I said I was never going to put my career in anybody else's hand again, and I
Wow.
didn't. I eventually bought a van, bought a PA, owned the lights, booked the shows, and started booking a little circuit of rooms after that band broke up. And then I moved to Oklahoma. My dad called me one day. He's like, "Son, I've seen an ad in the paper. They need a drummer 6 nights a week." Well, the oil boom was going on, and I was temporarily not working, and it really kind of hit a wall. I'd not had trouble finding work, and all of a sudden, I couldn't find work, and so that call was just, man, the timing couldn't have been better.
Hmm.
And so I moved to Yukon, Oklahoma, right outside of Oklahoma City, just to the west. That's where Garth is from.
Right.
And so I established myself, and I went worked this residency for about a year and a half, and then we started working in the city in Oklahoma City, and then I started booking us regionally all around the region, Oklahoma, Texas, Missouri, Kansas. Uh, but I digress. There's an important thing that happened before all of this happened that I need to tell you, and that is going back to where I went to high school in Aurora, Missouri. When my father took a job in Saudi Arabia, my mother went and I went. And it was a road construction job.
Wow.
And the assistant for our company was a British woman, and her husband was in the British Aircraft Corporation. We lived in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
And she said, there's a band whose members are all from Scotland and Wales and England, and they play in the capital city in Dhahran, which we lived in Al Khobar. And then Saudi Arabia was like a desert kingdom, a Bedouin kingdom. It looked like literally once you went outside of the city limits, you're in the empty quarter, the second largest desert in the world. And I never dreamed I would meet a band living there.
That's amazing.
But she told me about them. She said, "Come out to the club. They play on the weekend." I went, "There's a club? Where?" And she said, "It's inside Dhahran." And it was Dhahran is a city built by Aramco, a big oil company in the 40s. And it was like an American city, probably 150, 200,000 people, shopping centers, malls, and this big outdoor cabana type venue that had kind of a roofed area that went around it, so it was somewhat you could get out of the sun.
Kind of
And
like
then
an
they had this,
amphitheater, kind of like an
yeah,
amphitheater kind of thing.
it was totally enclosed.
Okay.
And then they had this huge stage and this seven-piece band that went by the name Badge. That was a song by Eric Clapton.
Yeah. So
And this
talent
band
just finds you, man. Just
And
somehow.
this band played everything. I mean, they played Sam and Dave. They played all kinds of R&B. They played Cream and Clapton and all of this really cool 60s music that I grew up on. I knew this music. I mean,
Hmm.
I knew I belonged there. And so I got up and I got to meet the band, and the drummer is telling me, he's like, I said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "Oklahoma." And I said, "Wow, I was born in
Wow.
Oklahoma."
No way.
And he said, "Well, I'm leaving and going back there shortly. And in a couple of weeks, I'll be gone, and they're going to need a drummer. You should apply." And he said, "Why don't you get up and sit in with us?" And I did. And they hired me.
Wow.
And I'm 16 and playing in a band in
Golly,
Saudi
in
Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, of all places. What?
It was wild. And so again, I had moved to I when I left Saudi Arabia, it was because I couldn't get into a high school. Like at that time, Saudi Arabia had schools for Saudi nationals, but they didn't have high schools for American citizens. Like
Hmm.
you had to go out of country.
Right.
You had to either go to Switzerland, you had to go to Bahrain or somewhere else, and I couldn't get into school. And so I wanted to finish high school, and so I moved from there to Dallas, Texas, and went my last 2 years of high school in 1 year going to night school and working a day job,
Yeah.
either at construction or working in a big truck stop. And for that year, I didn't play music. I worked a day job and focused on going to school at night so I could get my high school diploma, and I did.
But ultimately, the goal that entire year is I need to get this out of the way so that I can get back to my art.
Yeah.
I bet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when I graduated, I didn't live in Dallas a very long time, maybe 8 months after I graduated, and I moved back to Missouri, and that's when I ended up going to college in Joplin, getting in the rock band and all of that, starting kind of my career being again more of a band leader and not a
Hmm.
sideman.
So
But
eventually,
I had to inject Saudi Arabia and Dallas in there because all that happened before I moved to Joplin.
what a great story, first of all. It's funny how you want to be Paul McCartney, you end up in a band with all these guys from the UK. I mean, what? I mean, what are the chances of that, right? Especially in Saudi Arabia, of all places.
Of all places,
Yeah,
you
it's
just
like my
wouldn't think
first
of it.
wife. Like, she was from Texas, I was from Massachusetts. We met in Virginia. Like, what are the chances, right?
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. The things that stories will remind people of, right?